Hello, authors. I'm Joanne Morrell, children's and young adult fiction writer and author of short nonfiction for authors. Thanks for joining me for the Hybrid Author podcast, sharing interviews from industry professionals to help you forge a career as a hybrid author, both independently and traditionally publishing your books. You can get the show notes for each episode and sign up for your free author pass over at the Hybrid Author website to discover your writing process, get tips on how to publish productively, and get comfortable promoting your books at www.hybridauthor.com.au. Let's crack on with the episode. Hello, authors! I hope you're all keeping well in whatever part of the world you reside and listen to the podcast in. Today's interview is with the simply stunning children's picture book illustrator, Amy Calautti, and she shares with us how independent authors can hire the services of a professional illustrator, what the working processes are like between author and illustrator, a schedule of works, time frame, contracts, agreements, what aspects an author can expect an illustrator to consider when quoting for a job, and Amy shares her tips for authors starting out on their illustrator sourcing adventure. So in my author adventure this week, I've started the writing process by actively starting to think about the next project up on my list, which if you've listened to the last couple of episodes, you'll know it's a feature horror script I'm scripting to enter a screencraft writing competition, and that is it's due at the end of October. So I'm immersing myself in books and movies of a dark nature, which coming up to Halloween isn't hard to do. I have a setting, I have a title, I have part of a plot and a rough cast of characters, and I'm beginning to put together a brief schedule of works which include when I need to have the planning stage done by, the initial first draft, time to sit, the writing to sit, and beta read, and time to rewrite, all before the 31st of October. So it's going to be tight, but if I've learned anything in this past year and being aware of my writing process, I work better to a deadline and under pressure. So fingers crossed. This might be too ambitious with the goal I've just relayed and it being school holidays now, but I'm considering putting together a short webinar or online event in October on author fears and how to overcome them. Being the scary season, it will be good to open up the conversation author to author on what scares us the most in seeking a hybrid author career. So I hope you'll join me for that if it goes ahead. So if you love the podcast or any of the episodes has helped you further in your author career, you can now pay it forward by buying me a coffee over at www.buymeacoffee.com/thehybridauthor, and that's capital T, all caps hybrid, capital A. Link to that in the show notes and as always on the social media posts and web pages. So a big shout out and thank you to my second supporter to buy the Hybrid Author a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, and not just one but three. So I'm super energized and jittery, all thanks to you, Lorraine Horsley. Lorraine is a children's and young adult fiction and non-fiction author of You've Got This, Tips for the Uncertain Student, and her new picture book release, When You Left. They're both out now with Dixie Books, so go and grab your copy. So you can also tune in to hear all of Lorraine's fabulous writing advice on episode 21 on the podcast, and it's not to be missed. It was absolutely fantastic talking to her, and I really connected with everything she said because it was a lot of my experience as well, But in Lorraine's experience, she's never given up and look where she is now. So thank you so much, Lorraine. Your support means the world. If you don't want to support my coffee habit, but still want to support the podcast, you can also leave me a review on whatever platform you listen to the podcast on. Just a couple of words to let me and others who might write like you know how the podcast is helping further your author career. Let's all support each other. So that's enough from me. Let's crack on with the episode. Amy Calautti loves to illustrate picture books for kids. Since receiving her first contract in 2019, she has become an in-demand illustrator who has completed 14 picture books and counting. Amy received formal artistic training in fashion and textile design in high school and at TAFE, and has since developed a few distinct illustration styles and is always playing with new techniques to expand her repertoire. When Amy's not doing her favorite thing, which is illustrating picture books, she's planning a fun camping trip for her young family. Fantastic bio, Amy. Welcome to the Hybrid Author podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So obviously from your bio, you've been, into kind of
art and lots of different kind of styles of design. How is it you came to land be an illustrator for picture books?
Basically, I joined a few Facebook illustration groups and I didn't realize that this is a job that normal people do. And I thought I could definitely use my talents towards illustrating picture books, because when I was at school, teachers would always say your styles are so fun and energetic, you'd be good for anything to do with children. And they could see it before I did, obviously. I sort of worked on my portfolio and did a few courses, or I did a course and I interacted with people on the internet and did some challenges and things like that, made lots of internet friends and kind of established myself on social media that way. Not a huge following, but, you get to know people with similar interests. And I ended up getting my first 3 contracts within a couple of months of each other. My first contract was with a WA author called Tina Raffa-Mulligan through Daisy Lane Publishing. And that was just based on things I did on social media. And my other 2 contracts came about in different ways, because I submitted to a publisher because they wanted a particular style and I could do that. So I got that contract. And then the next one was I got a recommendation from a friend through Squibbie. So 3 different ways of getting contracts or, getting work. And it all kind of happened at once. And I had a year to finish my 2 traditional published books. Or actually, they're all traditional, those 3. And the first book I finished within a couple of months for Tina. And then the next 2, it took me a year. So, yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. That's really amazing. So, yeah, obviously establishing yourself in this way online set you up for then to be starting to receive contracts, picture book contracts for your work, which is fantastic. And we're going to talk about traditional books and the process there. We'll start just with authors who are self-publishing their own books. Have you had much contact with people sourcing you who are publishing their own works to illustrate their books rather than, say, from the traditional side, one-on-one with the author?
I have worked with self-publishers. I've done about 4 self-published books, but they have come to me through a hybrid publisher as the middleman, so to speak. So they have where to print the books and their distribution all lined up first. And I'm definitely open to an author approaching me, but usually the authors that do approach me haven't got those 2 things lined up. So they're not exactly ready to publish yet. So it hasn't panned out just yet. I mean, I would just recommend the illustrators generally, getting close to the end of the process is when you start looking for your illustrator. You can have a few people in mind and follow. I'd say have where you're going to be printing your books or if you're going to distribute it yourself or how to sell it.
Get asked a lot by people, I've had this picture book idea, how do I hire an illustrator? And I guess your advice there is just write the book and then source the illustrator, because most people up front seem to think they've got this idea, find the illustrator.
Yes. When I did one of my recent books with Kyrie Harvey, she's an influencer. So I got a lot of people who've had ideas buzzing in their heads. Hey, I'd really like you to illustrate my book. And I'm like, oh, great. What's the story about? And they're like, oh, I still have to write it. And you're like, okay, well, definitely write it and do a few of these things first and then come back to me when you're ready, So definitely open to it, but just have all your ducks in a row so we're not waiting around. Yeah, but I've never really had to do that before, but it just hasn't panned out yet. I'm open to it.
Yeah. No,
I don't know if that answers, but hopefully.
Yeah. No, that's definitely great. I mean, if an author is looking to hire an illustrator, would you suggest the best thing they do is go on to social media and look at styles? Say they've written their book, now they want to find an illustrator. They go on social media, contact different groups, such as Squibbie?
Yes. So you can go to the ASA Style File, Illustrators Australia, Squibbie Illustrators Gallery. You can look on Instagram, on Facebook Illustrators Group. I'd always, if you're following them through social media, I'd always like and comment on their work, stay in contact, and they also need to see that you're a serious author as well. And you can check out each other's websites, do Zoom meetings if you don't have internet dropping out constantly like me. But yeah, I just establish a relationship, I guess. Definitely if you go to Squibbie, you go to meetups and all that sort of thing, and you get to know each other, and you know that everybody's serious about writing and everybody's serious about illustrating or whatever. So it's generally okay. Like everyone's looking to make books and all that sort of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So hypothetically, because as you said, you're open to it, but you haven't yet worked sort of one-on-one with authors. If an author approached you at the end of their work, and what would generally be the process? Would the author expect to take direction from you, the illustrator, or you, the illustrator, would expect the author kind of to tell you what they want and how they want it?
I'm happy to work to a design brief, but I'm also happy to take creative control. I generally always ask, because I've got a few different styles, what style do you want? But I can generally tell from the type of manuscript how to illustrate it. But I usually storyboard everything first, and then we can go through a few changes at that stage if that's not really hitting the mark. And that's just like storyboards every single page with the text or the text placement, and it's just black and white pencil drawings. Well, that's how I work. And then if something's not quite hitting the mark, we can always just redo a few of those illustrations. And that's where I like to do my changes, so I'm not getting surprises of doing final artwork again after, working, 10, 15 hours on it,
Yeah. So,
that's
it. How many sort of rounds of edit?
I think I've only ever done and this was at the start, like 2 rounds of changes, probably for my first books, because I got a year to do those. And I generally only have to do 1, or sometimes now I don't really get any changes back because I've got it. So that comes down to experience. But authors, I had a self-publishing, or not I can't work out if they're self-published or not. She was really, really specific about what she wanted, and I thought, there's not much creativity here, but it did make my job easier, and I just went through everything really well, got no changes on it, and it was very streamlined, that process. So that did work well for me as well. So it's just being clear about what you want at first, because I've had authors say, just be creative, I want to see what you bring to this, or there's other ones that want very specific things, and that's okay too.
Oh, fabulous. Say you guys, the authors contacted you, they've told you specifically what they want, and you strike up a relationship and agree to work with each other. Is a plan sort of drawn up from there about like completion of work and turnaround time? Do you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Most of the time I get a contract from the publisher, but you can get them. I've downloaded one from the ASA before, and if you're a member, I think it was a few years ago I did this. It was like $70 for this author. It was through my publishing company, which I thought was really strange at the time that they didn't provide a contract, and I did it. But anyway, I've done it before myself. So it was work for hire job. So that means that I just didn't take royalties and an advance and stuff like that. So what I did is what you'd expect to find in that sort of contract is, hang on, I just wrote it down, the schedule. So when I can complete this book, and because I have other projects going at the same time, I can fit them in and let them know when they can expect me to be finished. Also, how much it's going to be, the deposit and the finishing deposit. I usually just take one at the start and when I hand over the work, and then that just makes it easier for me. The type of artwork supplied, like usually it's CMYK digital files, intellectual property of the artist, like copyright and all that sort of thing, and how the author can use your artwork. Generally, it's only for the book and not putting on extra products and things like that, but you can use it to promote your book. Or also work for hire or royalties and advance. So that's either sort of situation. And there's international rights, digital rights, education rights, I think. If education rights is generally if you take royalties and advance. But I guess that's up to the author and the illustrator to work out. I've just found it easier to do work for hire when I've been working with the self-publishing authors, just because I don't know how much they sell, who knows? So just I don't know, I just found a lump sum was sort of easier, and then just being like, okay, that's done and the author's happy, I'm happy, and they can print as many copies as they like. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and probably cleaner and easier from both sides. If it was royalty based, say there was a project you thought, no, let's do the author wanted to do a royalty split, and you were happy with that, and you went ahead. Does it matter? Like, it's the same price as a one. Well, is it cheaper?
I think it is, because what you do with my traditional contracts is that you get an advance. So say that's like $1,000 or a couple of grand or something like that. And then you do the work, and they've got an established, so this is why I'm willing to take advances and royalties on traditional projects, because they have their distribution network set up. So, you're going to at least sell 1,000 copies or whatever and make a decent amount of money. And you also get education lending rights and ELR and PLR, so public lending rights. So you get a payment every year on top of that, and also your royalties. So you get your money in drips and drabs through the government and through your traditional publisher with how many units you sell. So once you've earned out your advance, then you get money on top of that.
Yeah. It's almost like a guarantee. You're going to get this, you're going to get that. Whereas I guess going the royalty route with the self-published author who's probably just starting out, this is their first book, you don't know the outcome. So yeah, no, I get that.
Exactly. It's a little bit more guaranteed that you'll at least sell a print run or a couple, I guess, hopefully, fingers crossed. The influencer girl that I worked with, I didn't even ask for royalties because I knew she wouldn't want to share, because she can sell like bulk.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I get that. Well, when I was first starting to write in my first year of uni, really taking it seriously, and I self-published what I called it junior fiction, but I'm not sure what the hell it was. Anyway, I wasn't a member of Squibbie at the time. I didn't really, again, these questions that I'm asking you, I probably would have been good knowing the answer then and not knowing what I was doing. And because I was a student, I just put like an ad out on Gumtree, put a lump sum up, that was all I could afford, and I had a lot of interest. It was mainly students, because obviously it wasn't massive, and I have to say the work that the guy did, he's so good, and he just worked his ass off for this money. I feel like I absolutely ripped him off. But this book, it sold probably to friends and family and stuff, but apart from that, it didn't go anywhere either. So in that case, probably him taking that money was worth it. But also for him, he got, I gave him copies of the book, and he built his portfolio up by doing those illustrations as well. So that was kind of good. At this time round, I know the right track would be, like yourself, to go onto Squibbie to now sort of source it that way and pay correctly, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone has different circumstances and how they want to pay people as well. I don't know. So it's just you can always refer to the ASA, but yeah, I think those prices are for, established illustrators as well. Say that.
Yeah. I had one guy sort of say, if it was worth blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, that is actually all I have. That's all I'm budgeting for this. Take it or leave it type of thing. So yeah, I think what you're going to put out, I guess, is what you get back in. But it was a good experience. So working, as any business, services provided vary from client to client depending on specific needs and things. And illustrations, what are some of the aspects an illustrator considers when they're quoting a job for an author? Like what are those?
All right, so I think it depends on the experience of the illustrator. So if they're really in demand, or they're getting published by like big publishers or whatever, obviously they're going to command a higher price. How long it takes to do a project, and also if you want your project done within 6 to 8 weeks, when usually the artist would take 4 months, that means they'll be losing their evenings and weekends. So that would be a rush fee. So there's that, but I've only ever had that once. Usually I can take my time, or not just work not regular hours. Also, the equipment and materials and things like if they're a digital artist, they've got expensive computers, they've got a Photoshop subscription they have to pay for. That's like $80 a month. And also for a traditional artist, you've got to have a scanner, you've got to have paper, it costs $10 a sheet, and also all of your paints. And it is kind of expensive, but yeah. And also your experience and your training, and it takes a long time to learn how to draw. So that does get factored in.
Well, you just don't think of these things. Like I wouldn't even, materials and any of that wouldn't even cross my mind, to be honest. So no, it's good to know. That's what I'm saying, like an author, to keep these in mind when they are contacting the illustrators. All these things need to be factored in,
Yeah, there's probably even more. I mean, if you've got someone who's really keen, who's starting out being an illustrator, I think, you could get yourself a good bargain, but just be wary if they know how to lay out a page and stuff. So you could definitely ask them, pay them to do a test illustration to see if you're on the same vibe or whatever. I don't know. So I think that's a good starting point if you want to get someone who's generally new to illustration, or if you've got someone experienced, you can still do a test or whatever. I do that occasionally, but I usually just give them my portfolio and they're like, oh yeah, sweet. Yep.
Yeah. You can tell from a person's style, I suppose, like how, and probably be more surprised when they hit it on the mark first off. Yeah, no, I think that's great. So you've mentioned contracts and things like that. Is it, is an expectation of illustrators to have their name cited on the work always, either on the front or in the inside matter? Is that a given?
On picture books, because I'm a picture book illustrator, yes, because we do come to the party a little bit later. We don't write the text, but we do the visual narrative, and there's just as much work that goes into it. I've seen in a lot of is it middle grade or junior fiction or whatever, they've got maybe the illustrator on the inside, especially when the author's super famous. I think that happens a lot, which I suppose is okay. But I think for something like a graphic novel, like if you've got an author and an illustrator combo, I think that they should definitely get some recognition for it, because they're doing half of the work again. It's just like a picture book, and if not more, because those things could be 200 pages long, and it's kind of set out like a comic book, I guess. Yeah, I think it depends on the story. Yeah, it's our intellectual property as well, I guess, not the story, but the pictures that go along with it to help support that story.
Yeah, no, definitely. And do illustrators expect, with traditional publishing as well, I suppose, and working with independent self-published authors, do they expect a couple of copies of the book, to keep as well? Or is that part and parcel?
Well, I've only had 2 books where they just haven't supplied me the books that I was owed, and I haven't followed it up really. Well, I've tried to follow it up with one a few times, but that's okay. We just haven't sorted it out. I usually get between 5 to 10 copies, gratis copies, and then, or however you say that, and I usually buy about 20 on top anyway, so I'm a customer, but I usually get a illustrator fee, so I usually pay 50% RRP. And then 40 to 50% depending on how many copies you buy. And that includes the traditional publishers as well. So I've had that on all of my books. Yeah, so that's why I always have like a million books. If I ever show you like my bookshelf on Instagram or whatever, I've got loads of books there, but I probably need to go to the markets and sell them one day. I don't know. And family,
Yeah, it's almost like a collaborative process between author and illustrator, especially with picture books. And like you said, there is the text, but the artwork brings it to life as well. So and you can work together to both share and support and spread the message. Yeah. So why wouldn't you, I suppose, give the books as promotional material?
Yeah.
So what are you've already shared so much, Amy, thank you so much, but do you have any other tips for authors that looking to hire and work with an illustrator from your experience? If there've been any experiences you think, oh gosh, if only authors knew this?
So I would just say follow them on social media, meet up on Zoom, have a look at their website and look at their portfolio, and they can do a similar thing. It's kind of like a big trust thing to start with. But if they know that, if the illustrator knows you're genuine and you know that the illustrator is genuine, because there are illustrators say on Fiverr. I've seen in some groups on Facebook that download other artists' work and then try and sell it off as their own. And you're like, oh, you just have to be wary of that sort of thing. But if they've on Instagram, they're putting up their own original work all the time, you know that it's theirs. If they've got a bit of a track record, if they've already done 2 or 3 books, you know that they can complete work. Someone within your own country, I don't know, I haven't worked with anyone from overseas yet. I'm a bit scared of that at the moment. I don't know. I've had someone contact me before, but I think they were searching. They accidentally came up on an Australian site instead of an American site. Someone that you can meet there's a lot of trust in it.
Great. No, I know what you're saying. I ended up, I don't know, I think just working local and the guy that I ended up working with, Brendan Cownans, his name was, I think he lived up the hills. So we did actually meet, and I never knew like the ASA did contracts or anything. I ended up just sort of pulling one from the internet, I think. And then I went to a local business center. Well, I went to this local business center for them to have a look over it, just to say, you know, if I missed anything, is it? And the guy had just said to put in a clause in there that said if there was any issues where we both had to appear in court, that it would be in a Perth court. So I didn't have to end up somewhere else, but it turned, he was from Perth anyway, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, working with someone overseas, exactly that. You could strike up a deal. They don't deliver. They're not exactly around the corner for you to be able to chase up, and it would just be an absolute nightmare. So
most of my clients have been from over east, but there is EK Books, and they're based in New Zealand, but they're also based in Sydney. So I suppose they are slightly international, but I knew of them first for a long time, and I wanted to get published by them, and I knew they were a genuine publishing house. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, but they're reputable.
But if it's just your average guy off the street, you just have to research for yourself, I guess.
Yeah, be mindful. No, that's it. Well, switching gears, because it's the Hybrid Author podcast, and it sounds like most of your experience has come from traditional publishing houses as well. So what's the process with them? Same kind of thing? Do they contact you, send you the works for the illustrations, and what happens?
So with the traditional contracts, so they with EK, so they'll send me a manuscript and say, are you interested? And I'm always like, yeah. Of course. And EK will sometimes get me to do a sample character illustration. So it's just a black and white sketch, and they'll send it to the author and go, do you like this? So the author does get a say so, and they go, yep. And then they have a look through maybe my Instagram, because that's where all my latest work would be. Probably looking at my Instagram is a bit confusing though, because I've got different styles. They'll have a look through that. And then what I do is I storyboard everything. And that takes me about 2 to 3 weeks, because the ideas take me a little bit. And then they get back to me with feedback. And what we'll do then is we will go through a round of changes. And it's generally... The last book I had with them, I didn't really have, maybe I had one change at the end of the story. We decided to do that one scene 2 times, because at the end of the book, I was like, let's do a sneeze, because it was meant to be like a surprise at the end, and it was meant to knock over something, the sneeze. But then they were like, no, because it's about a story in a library. And they said, oh, but it's a new library, so it wouldn't be a dusty book. So let's do a different idea. And I think we just had a book. I can't even remember. Hang on. It's my new book as well. Hang on. I'm just looking at the book. I just had to redo that idea several times. So she's carrying a stack of books and she falls over. And then everybody at the end of the book helps her pick up the books that she dropped. So I had to redo that a couple of times, and then I went on to the final artwork. They just send me a PDF so I can look over everything and once it's all together with all of the stuff that the book designer's done, I can go, yep, I like that, or, oh, I might change this one thing, and then they go and print it. So that's the illustration process with those guys, and Little Pink Dog Books is very similar. I just do the storyboard, and then I maybe get 1 or 2 changes, if that, and then I just get the go-ahead to do the final artwork, and then they send me everything that the book designer's done. Yeah, it's exactly the same.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, you have quite a lot of creative freedom with the traditional publishing, which is great, but you don't seem to have a lot. They're more like the third party. You don't really have that much contact with the author.
Well, sorry, yes, I do. So the author is also approving everything at every stage as well. And if they don't like the ideas, they definitely speak up.
To you directly, they'll say to you, or they'll say to the publisher?
We just speak in email. So we'll just go, hi, publisher and author, or illustrator and publisher, and we all just like stay in a conversation together. But I've definitely talked to authors on my own as well. Like, I don't mind. Going to art school, you get all sorts of feedback all the time anyway. So yeah.
No, that's fantastic. That's really good. Well, tell us about your books that you've illustrated so far. I've been seeing your Instagram and they're just stunning.
Thank you. But I've got about 10 hang on. I've got to count them all. I've got, I think, about 12 out now. And then I've got another 3 coming out. One I'm working on at the moment. So my latest releases are one book was All It Took by Wenda Shirty, and obviously I illustrated it. But it's just about a girl who takes sort of initiative into her own hands, and she asks for a library to be built in her area. So she kind of creates a chain reaction of events in all different kinds of ways. And I've got Lucky's Horseshoes, and this one's a really funny book about a horse that wants to wear high heel shoes and fancy hats when she races. I've got Alaska and Her Magical Words, and that's a really nice book about affirmations for children. So that's a really sweet book, and it comes with like a whole bunch of cards at the back that the kids can read their affirmations to themselves every morning. That's really nice.
It's lovely.
And I've got Peanut, which is probably my favourite book. That's about a little elephant in the jungle who kind of like loses his way, and then he makes friends with a band of monkeys, and a crocodile tries to eat him. And I don't know, it sounds a little bit scary, but it's a really funny book. They're my latest ones out, and my older ones are, one of my first ones was Turning Cartwheels. That is a really great book about friendships within the school ground, about girls maybe doing exclusion bullying and stuff like that, and how to sort of cope and deal with that. Also Mr. Ming and the Mooncake Dragon. That is a Chinese folk tale, and Little Pink Dog Books asked me to do that because they really liked my style. That's quite a fun book. There's a self-publishing book, Heart of Gold, which is about a girl who gets open heart surgery, the process she had to go through for that. So if there's any kids that need that sort of thing, Alexandra Worth does that book. It's one of my first books, I think, that was. And When the Moon is a Smile, which is my very first book by Tina. That's about a dad who goes away for work every 2 weeks or is separated from his daughter, and she's just getting to know that he's going to be coming back every 2 weeks to come see her. I'm a Magic Ball, which is about imagination and learning all your words, and it's written by a speech pathologist, so that's an education tool, that book. There's Iris by Cassandra Papuga, this book is about being comfortable in your own self. It's about a purple alpaca who wants to fit in with a bunch of blue alpacas. Hector and His Highland Dancers, which is one of my other favourite books, which got a speech pathology shortlisting, which I can't really claim any fame to that. That's more the writer. But it's still got an award, so I'll say.
Sure you can.
And then Easy Peasy, and I've got That's with EK Books, which is about a girl who roller skates and she falls over a million times, and then, at the end of it, she obviously can roller skate, and it's awesome, and I really like that book. And I've got 2 Christmas books coming out, which one's called Savvy Santa and the other one is Alaska's Magical Christmas. And I've got another one called Looking After Grandma by Tina. And I think that is all of them. And if I've left one out, I'm really sorry. But I think
Wow, that's incredible. Such a vast difference between them all, right? You must have had so much fun.
It's been a busy couple of years.
Thank you so much for sharing all you have, Amy. It's definitely enlightened everybody, I'm sure, that's listening on how they can go about or how they can start thinking about, getting an illustrator and what's involved with the process of hiring one and what they need to be mindful of. They can check out your style. So where can our listeners find you and your work and everything, your books, on and offline?
Usually you can find me on Instagram at Amy Gorgeousness. It's a bit of a weird name, but that's my name. And online, I just say go to my Instagram and you can find all of my links through there for my website, etc. Or you can friend me on Facebook, Amy Louise Calautti. Or I've got Amy Illustrates actually on Facebook. Either is fine. I'm always open to talking to illustrators as well if they need any help. I'm always easy to chat to, I think.
Oh, thanks again, Amy. That was incredible.
Oh, you're welcome.
So there you have it, folks. The all-inspiring Amy Calautti sharing her Illustrator expertise on helping you on your authored venture to hire the services of a professional illustrator. So make sure you check Amy and her gorgeous illustrations out over at her website or Instagram page. Next time on the Hybrid Author podcast, we have hybrid author of best-selling fantasy fiction, Helen Scheurer, who's chatting to us about her debut non-fiction book, How to Write a Successful Series. This is an absolutely incredible interview and one you wouldn't want to miss. So I wish you well in your author adventure for the next week. That's it from me. Bye for now. That's the end for now, authors. I hope you're further forward in your author adventure after listening, and I hope you'll listen next time. Remember to head on over to the Hybrid Author website at www.hybridauthor.com.au to get your free author pass. It's bye for now.